Slightly embarrassing start here. Does your TV still have rabbit ears? This whole presentation was put together when Mike asked me to come along, and because I've only just joined TwoFour, I don't have a whole wealth of projects that I've worked on with them. But I have been doing this for quite a long time, and I spent quite a long time at the BBC. So I'm going to share some of my thoughts about where it's come from, and other broadcasters as well, and perhaps some of the things that might change that in the future. It's quite a personal look, and it's sort of, well, let's just get on with it. So, does your TV still have rabbit ears? Those are rabbit ears on that TV there. I was reading a blog by a gentleman called, what was his name? Scott Hennelsman. And he did a lovely piece on 14 icons for old people that are not really relevant. So, as a question, does anyone here still have a television which has rabbit ears? Good. Right. Point made, I think. Yeah, you recognise that as being a television. There's a couple of other ones. The one in the middle there, that's your phone. That's the button that pretty much appears on your iPhone. Has anybody got a rotary dialing telephone they still use? No. And of course, if you want to download or save content, the floppy disk, they make nice kind of coasters, but not useful for much else. So I was looking at this and thinking, well, that's kind of interesting, and then but was taken back to the television and was starting thinking, actually, how much has television changed? You know, since it did have rabbit ears at the top of it, and I was kind of thinking, well, perhaps in some ways, not that much. So let's get rid of that for a second. Get rid of the ears and go back to the TV. But of course, as a device, sat in the corner of your room, the television is very flat, it's very sleek, it probably doesn't have any buttons at all on there. So let's get rid of one of those, and then you go, oh, hold on, yeah, no, that's an iPad, isn't it? Turn it around, and it looks remarkably like an iPhone. Could be some speakers. It's a microwave, which I think is actually what led the BBC to come up with its one service, 10 products, 4 screens idea. And it doesn't really matter what you're doing because people are using those screens in the same way. So although the television itself is kind of merging and converging, and you can do lots of different things with it, we're still, I think, consuming television quite a lot. Now again, you can think about the formats that go with it, and now you can record, you know, onto your set-top box. You can pause live TV. You can rewind it. I don't have any more for series linking or any of the amazing things you can still do now. But all of the things that you're doing with that, it's still television. And so as technology has advanced, as the devices have converged and changed, a lot of it is still around about looking at half-hour or hour chunks of content that companies like mine make, companies like the BBC make. But I think what's crucial is that one of the things that has changed is the way that we watch television. So this picture's been kicking around on various blogs. If you put, you know, family watching TV from the 50s, this is the picture that comes up. Everybody watching it together. Whereas, of course, the reality is that a majority of all TV viewing actually is a very solitary experience. And when I say it's solitary, it can even be solitary with members of the same family sitting in the same room. I certainly know that I'm sitting there watching one thing on the TV if I'm lucky. My daughter's looking at something else on the iPad with the headphones on if I'm really lucky. Otherwise, it's just kind of CBeebies, Formula One kind of, and my wife's just going like absolutely nuts. But I wonder if lots of people in the room here kind of quite like the idea that this is actually how we're watching television at the moment. I think this is a picture taken of some kids watching the Super Bowl this year. I have no idea what they're doing. but they're doing something else as well as watching television. Unless, of course, it's this guy here. I actually like to think the TV's down there somewhere, and he's the only one who's actually watching television, and the other guys there are just playing a game, talking to their mates or whatever. But it's certainly, as was mentioned before, it's a kind of there's a degree of interruption going on there. I found out today whilst checking this out, this is called chatterboxing. You probably all know that. It wasn't something that I ever came across at the BBC, but some figures there from e-consultancy was saying that 46% of 18 to 26-year-olds are doing this. Whatever it is, I'm pretty certain that it's not anything to do with the program they're watching at the time, all of the time. But that's one of the challenges we have. But broadcasters the world over are very, very excited about this. So CBS has just launched CBS Connect, where you can start talking and join the conversations about your programming. If you're a big fan of Game of Thrones, this is their Tumblr, where people are not just talking about it, but they're creating wonderful things around it. But all of this stuff that I've described is a conversation. It's something that's happening about television programs. The television programs are still pretty much the same. Now, I mean, I'm going to go through examples of where we've tried to change that. But broadly speaking, we're looking at a situation where we've just got a conversation about a thing. I'm quite excited about when TVs in our living rooms become connected, and they aren't a different device, but they're the big one in the corner. And I don't know what that's going to look like, and I'm not going to postulate it on now. But I think this is a point when we might actually change television. I've been trying to do some different things with television for quite a while, but I think what I want to get to is the opportunities that this opens up. Here's another nice graph. It's all in black and white, by the way, just because I'm old and I thought it would give a nice feel to it. So this is there was a survey was done asking what to a number of people who work in these areas about whether connected TV would be who would gain from it, who wouldn't be affected, and who would lose from it. And obviously TV set manufacturers are going to gain from it because it's a move on, which means that people will buy more televisions. People like YouTube and Hulu. We can well, put them together. They've got a lot to learn. I've got a Virgin box at home, and I've actually watched a few things on YouTube through it. It's quite exciting. And obviously with their new move into content channels, that's an interesting move. So I think there's a lot to do. Content providers, companies like TwoFour and many of your companies, I think, could really benefit from this because it opens up an opportunity for television and interactivity around it that possibly wasn't there before. But I'm worried. I'm worried about the people on the right-hand side, the perhaps free-to-air TV operators, broadcasters. And I'm sure that my colleague from Sky here may well disagree with me. And I just think there's a risk here, because what's going to happen with connected TV is something different, something that we're not sure about. And who knows what that could be. But I think the status quo and that changing is an exciting moment. So what I do now is this is a little quote from an article by David Tether from The Guardian. I was Googling today. Resurrection game. Interactive versions of tired game shows are breathing new life into old favourites and providing that TV can work on the web. That's from August 2000. So this kind of conversation has been going on a long time. If I remember rightly, this was one of the bits that stood out. Catchphrase, the long-running ITV game show could hardly be described as cutting-edge television. A badly drawn cartoon of a horse that's seen better days appears with a for sale sign written over its head. The answer to the conundrum, flogging a dead horse. And so it goes on for 30 frankly excruciating minutes. I said back in 2000, when I was working for a games company called Uproar, I described the phenomenon as yelling at the TV screen thing. I'm hoping that my presentation skills and my sound bites have come on somewhat since then, but on the basis of this presentation, perhaps not. But you want simple games that people are familiar with and ones that people get involved in. The reason they were talking to me when I was just a games producer was that I just produced the online version of Catchphrase. I went to the Wayback Machine to see if I could find a picture of it, because I don't have one anymore, but all the images had gone. I was quite excited to see that 78 people were actually playing it at the time, in August 2000. We'd just done a great quiz around Big Brother. My job at the time was watching Big Brother, and then writing quiz questions on it, as well, you know, in between producing games. It's a nice gig if you can get it. So anyway, then I was looking through, I went into Google Images to try and find one, and I thought, oh God, there's one. And then I realised that it was Draw Something, probably the biggest game of the moment. And I was like, it's almost exactly the same, except, of course, they got it the right way round, because the fun bit's drawing, not putting in the words. And that's where the creativity comes from it. But all through this whole process, and it was an interesting point that you made about doing the same thing when people like it, is just finding different takes on the same formats, the same games, the same game shows, the same ideas of keep recurring over and over again. And I'm really hoping that with interconnected TV, internet connected TV, there'll be an opportunity for these, for some of the old shows to sort of to breathe life back into them. So what I'm going to go through now is just a sort of a brief, this is kind of like it's quite cathartic really, some of the stuff that I worked on whilst at the BBC, and maybe just give some insights into the things that I think were really, really great about it, and some of the things that didn't work so well, potentially kind of making you think, well, okay, well, how can we apply that in the future? So Test the Nation, I don't know if anybody remembers this, but basically you could play along online, and with the TV show, it was live, and at the end of it you got an IQ score, which is brilliant. And then they rolled out, I think, about 15 more series of this, which were progressively less brilliant. Because not only the fact is the older you get, the lower your IQ becomes, so every time you did it you're going to get more stupid. But also the fact that we tried lots of different versions with the companies we were working with to do something. But the thing about the IQ was it was a great takeaway. In the same way that you got to drive a car at Le Mans, in a much smaller way, at least here at the end of the show, you got something that was really, that could apply to you and you could talk about afterwards. You couldn't talk about it on Facebook or Twitter, but you could go into the office and write it down on a piece of paper. ConnectedUK was an example of an absolutely brilliant game. It's based on share trading of celebrities, the number of column inches in the newspaper. I think at one point it had 800,000 concurrent users, which was slightly embarrassing for the public service broadcaster. But it was an absolutely rubbish television program. So they stopped making it. So one of the crucial things here was when all this excitement around interactive content was there, you had the opportunity to do some really brilliant things, but we seldom really thought about what people were actually going to watch, because television was still demanding its half hour. Come and have a go if you think you're smart enough. Does anyone remember this? No. BBC One, Saturday night, prime time. This was an awesome show. You played along online, and then if your team won, we had motorbikes all over the country, and we'd go out and we'd live stream you back in your living room. I think now there are better ways of doing it, but it was utterly unwatchable. And if we did it today, look at that. That would be the hashtag. We'd never get anywhere. And if they did it on the BBC, it would look like that, because it'd have to have BBC at the front of it. I think the point there I'm making is that with all of these formats, we were trying to do things that the technology really wasn't ready for, and also I don't think the audience was ready for. There was a degree of uncertainty, and I don't think anyone really believed that we were actually going out to people's homes. Creme de la creme of cock-ups from me was probably Upstaged. Does anyone remember this? Hey, Nick. Thank you, mate. Yeah, Upstaged. It was one of BBC Three's launch programmes. It was quite expensive. It consisted of having 2 glass rooms in Bristol city centre in the middle of February. It rained quite a lot. and people performed live in it for 6 hours at a time, whilst you could watch it streamed live on the internet, and then vote, and you could vote whenever you wanted to. We thought it would be brilliant because YouTube was just taking off, and we thought that if we could get all of the YouTubers, those vloggers, to compete against each other, to use the power of their communities to carry on voting, we'd build and build and build and build into the most amazing show. But it didn't work for a number of reasons, which I'll go into now. Firstly, as you eliminated people, because you stayed on, basically, it was winner stay on in the box. As you eliminated people, you eliminated all of their fans. So you started off, when you do the recruitment thing, with a huge fan base, and then systematically got rid of your entire audience until the moment that you went onto the telly, by which there was nobody left at all. There was 3 people and a bloke dressed in a badger in Bristol city centre. The other thing was that there was a bloke called Miles Dyer, who's Blade 376, I believe it is, who I later gave a job to because he's a clever bastard. I think he works for Channel Flip now, doesn't he? Is there someone here from Channel Flip? But anyway, and what he did is he corralled all of the YouTubers together into one super team. So they went into the boxes and talked for a long time, for 6 hours pretty much, and garnered the entire support, whilst therefore making, well, it was kind of nice. He had some messages, and I respect him totally for doing it, but it didn't necessarily make for the best TV show. But we completely left the editorial up to the people in the boxes, which I would definitely say is something you don't want to do. I didn't make the bank job, but I wish I had. Looking at all of the things that we did wrong at the BBC there, I'm very, I think some of the stuff Channel 4's done recently has been great. This isn't me kind of being bitter at the BBC or anything. I just think over the last few years, Channel 4's really come to the fore. And I think the fact that they have used the process of getting people into the show in the bank job was brilliantly done. And the £1 million drop, I think, obviously, I won't go on about because it's been much said, but he did have that shouting at the TV thing, because you did want to answer those questions, and he did it seamlessly. I'm really looking forward to seeing the Antiques Roadshow second screen app. If you didn't know that was real, it is. Because you do. You kind of go, oh, 50 quid? 70 quid? And it's got it right there. I think that could be really, really special. And I was lucky enough to see the second screen out for The Frozen Planet, which I don't think many of you here were. This would be a cautionary tale in what not to do, potentially, because it not only had it had a live Twitter feed along with the show, and it had extra material. So on the telly in the corner of your room is the most amazing television programme you've seen in years, and on the second screen, God, penguin, awesome, oh, ooh, which was the sum total of the Twitter feed, and then a load of other information which you had no desire or time to look at. So the interruption there was like having an irritating teenager and a curmudgeonly professor sitting either side of you whilst you watched the programme. So I suppose, you know, there's just a few things that you know, musings, but this is the one that caught my attention yesterday. It was from Gary Lineker. Boom, brilliant figures for Match of the Day last night, 5.4 million for a show that's on Sunday. Superb. Thanks for watching. And I just found it a sort of, you know, this whole moment of Man City waiting all of the years to win the Premier League. It was a moment that caught the imagination of the nation. And people have been talking about it on social media. And you couldn't go anywhere without feeling it was happening. And yet, there was a degree where I thought broadcasters still haven't quite got the fact that it isn't really about how many people were watching there and then. I mean, great, well done, Gary. You know, it is amazing, but it's not anything. There was a whole country who was interested in that. There was a whole nation who was just thinking about what could happen. And I think to set right some of the lessons that we've learnt over the last few years and give it and to give people like us an opportunity to move into that space, we've got to move away from overnight figures, and we've got to move away from that we've got to change television. We have to find ways of it stopping being about that half hour or that hour. That's it. Thank you very much.